And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Welcome to the RBLR Bucs podcast, where the draft may be over, but trust us, the takes are just getting warmed up. I'm Musab, one of your hosts tonight, and while the war room shut down and the draft cards are in, we're just getting started. It's time to dig deep into every pick, the good, the questionable, and the ones that might age like fine wine or like sour milk. Well, who nailed it? Who might have had a fan base sweating come preseason? We got all the hot takes for you, maybe some cold reads, and, a little bit of something, in between. But as always, shout out to the RBLR family, repping every corner of Tampa Bay sports, from our Lightning, on the ice to the Rays diamond to the Rowdies pitch to the Suns pitch as well. And, we see you, we love you. But we're on the Bucs pod, all right? And this is where we throw on the tape, we zoom in, and we get real, all right? And back with us tonight, bringing the spicy takes and full-on draft detective energy, fresh off the writing, Mr. Carter Brantley. How are you, man? What's the good word?
I'm good, man. Just chilling. I'm excited to talk some more draft stuff with you. Our co-host Zach couldn't be with us this week. He has familial obligations. Some of us have actual lives outside of watching football and baseball and other sports. Me, I don't, but that's all right. I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. But we'll get into his grades as well. In case before I get too ahead of myself, we're going to be doing some specific draft grades of each pick this week from the Bucs only. We're just doing a specific Bucs episode. I know last week we sort of took a bit of a broader look at things, look around the NFL and a bit more of a 100 feet in the air view of what the Bucs did with their draft. But we're getting down into the nitty gritty this week with each pick. Going to be doing something a little bit more different, something a little different than just assigning an overall grade. We'll still do that, but we'll try to be a little bit more explanatory with our grades, because it's easy to just say, A-, C+, B, and all that nonsense. But here at RBLR, we like to do something a little different. So we're mixing up a little bit. But speaking of that, if you want to keep up with our interesting approaches to discussing Bucs football, definitely give us a like or subscribe. You can also follow us at RBLR Sports or at RBLR Bucs. We'd really appreciate it. So we'll get right into it. We'll just go through each pick, starting from the top all the way down. And so we'll start with probably the most controversial pick. The first round, pick 19, they went with Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver out of OSU. So I'll kick things off and kind of guide our listeners through this. So I started with positional need based on, who they picked and, where they picked him. So this is specifically like how Emeka addresses positions that the Bucs really needed. And obviously the wide receiver room is pretty good already. So I gave this a D-, which sounds harsh. Don't worry, stick with me. I know that there are probably some people that think, man, what are you doing? That's just positional need. Draft fit is in terms of if they reached or maybe they got really good value, like if they sat and wait for a guy, just based on the consensus mock boards and also our own opinions of the draft. So that's a B for me, because Emeka at 19, pretty solid, not really a reach, but also not really a steal either. Most people had him going in the middle of or the late first round. So, this was fine. My opinion of the player himself, this is just purely taking out the Bucs aspect of it and just focusing on the player. I gave him an A-, because I think he's going to be pretty good. Like if he was drafted by, fill in the blank, any other wide receiver needy team that had an opening at the slot wide receiver role, he would be a really great fit. Like he could be a really, really good get for another team. But he could still be a good get for the Bucs. But regardless, my opinion of him as a player, taking out the context, A-, because he's just really, really good. So my overall grade, kind of factoring all that in, it's not necessarily a perfect average of those 3-letter grades, but it's sort of just like maybe a nebulous vibes-based kind of overall grade. I gave it a C+, because while I'm not as down as perhaps Zach Blaine, who we'll get to, I'm certainly not excited about it. I do think that there were a lot of other ways that the Bucs could have gone with this first round pick. But at the same time, Jason Light has done a great job with receivers. We talked about it a little bit last week as well. So if he thinks the world of this guy at the wide receiver position, you know, maybe he's got something going on because he drafted Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. Mr. Tariq, based on those parameters, what were your grades that you gave this Emeka Egbuka pick in the first round?
Yeah, man, this one was positional need. I gave it a D. It just I don't know what else to say. This is not something that we had thought about before going to the draft. I said, okay, yeah, I think we can maybe snag a wide receiver later in the later rounds, maybe, but we had other bigger needs. But draft fit, I'm just gonna, kind of rock with you, Carter. I mean, I got nothing against the guy. I mean, I don't think it was a reach or a steal, nothing like that. It's not really anything amazing. It's what you expect, that player to land in the later first round, maybe early second round. But I got to say though, I mean, even my opinion of the player, I think he's good, but I just don't, you know, I forget who it was, Todd Bowles or Jason Light, but they had mentioned, Carter, that we're not going to pass up on some kind of, I don't even know what the right word was, but some special talent, some special
Sure.
offensive talent. They said that, right? But
Right.
I don't see that in him, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I'm not saying that this guy is just a complete, just trash football player either, but it just doesn't satisfy me. And I know many people feel the same way, but I'm sure there's a reason behind all this. I think it's just insurance. But so that being said, I'm gonna give it an overall grade of C. I feel like it just wasn't completely like god awful. It wasn't like stupid. It's one thing if we got a kicker in the first round or something,
Right.
but it
Right.
wasn't that. Fortunately, it wasn't that. But um, I think it's just reaching too early for I guess a potential long term investment or a long
Yeah.
term solution. So yeah, I'm still feeling weird about it overall, Carter. Not gonna lie to you.
No, I'm with you, and I think that maybe what the only thing that can really ease some of the Bucks fans' anxieties is seeing him on the field. That's really just it. So it's gonna feel weird for a while, unfortunately. I don't know that there's any magical quote. I don't know that there's any magical thing that's going to happen that's automatically going to make us all fall in love with this pick, other than him just going out there and being an absolute monster, which totally in the cards, totally in the realm of possibility. So now Zach Blaine's grades. He surprised me with this. I thought he was going to be real dark on it, and he wasn't happy about it with these grades, but he certainly was a lot brighter than I expected. Positional need was F, so that's certainly just laying it all out there. But draft fit was B plus, highest of all three of us, and opinion of the player was an A. Like, hey, I mean, if you get an A grade player, regardless of position, that's not always the worst thing. And so his overall grade was a C. So he seems to be a little bit less, I know at draft night, emotions are high and all that stuff. But he seems to have come down a little bit. But he'll talk more about it soon, I'm sure. But yeah, I thought that was a very, very even keeled, because if you give a grade a C, a player a C, like you're basically saying like, well, I'm not necessarily crazy about the pick, but I can see where at least they're coming from. And I think that's where Zach's head is at this point. So, cool. That's good. So we'll move on to Benjamin Morrison, their round 2 pick, 53 overall. He's the corner out of Notre Dame. So a little bit of background on him. He had I believe a hip injury of some sort. And so that dropped his draft stock quite a bit. A lot of people had him going mid first round at least. Some people were saying, he was kind of in the conversation for CB1 for a little while, other than Travis Hunter, of course, who's kind of in his own category. But yeah, he fell to the Bucs at 53. And man, I'm pretty excited about this pick, but I'd love to hear your thoughts first, Mr. Treek. What are your grades that you gave this pick, Benjamin Morrison?
I gave this an A plus. I was really happy with this pick. He was not the guy that I honestly had in mind just because of the injury history. Injury history is always this kind of a red flag in my eyes.
Sure.
It's the same way why I felt a little kind of, iffy on someone like even Sharon Revel, who was also seen as top
That's
tier.
fair.
So,
Yeah.
but I have to say, I mean, I'm going to go with A plus on this with positional need. I mean, this was my number one need. I feel like we have just been begging for an edge or a DB, just someone, and a good one too. So, I mean, his tape speaks for it, and That's why, I mean, I think he's a great fit. Phenomenal player. I mean, he's an absolute ball hawk. I mean, he only basically had 3 seasons because that hip injury kind of had him out in 2024. But yeah, racked up 9 interceptions, absolute stud. I am nothing but, optimistic, only because, Carter, the Bucks front office, and they have scouts who, this is their job, to find that player. You know what I'm saying? So I have to say, the only thing that had me kind of feeling meh was the injury history. But if the Bucks, seem to have got that kind of green light from a kind of medical perspective, I think that this was a phenomenal pick, and I'm looking forward to seeing him on the field. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go through my grades as well. Yeah, so the positional lead, I'm right there with you, A plus. Draft fit, I gave him a B plus. So you were a little higher on the draft fit, right? You gave him, would you give him an A? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my opinion of the player, I'm a little bit more cautious due to partially due to the injury history, but also just because he was super productive in college. But you can't really rely on his combine results. There just weren't a whole lot to go on. And he seems to have it. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not me not knocking him at all. Like, B is still, I think he's going to be a good player. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he can transition to the NFL. How much of that hip injury lingers, because he did drop this far. That means that maybe that the hip injury is at least a bit of a risk. The Bucs clearly evaluated it, and they're probably right. Like, they evaluate, hey, the risk is worth the reward, because the reward could be that he's really, really good. So my overall grade for this pick was an A minus, just because it was a really, really solid pick. I'm definitely not disagreeing with it at all. There were other corners there that would have been fun too, but who might have really disagree? Like, they picked a corner, they picked a really good one. I'm not going to be too harsh on it. So A minus for Benjamin Morrison overall. I thought it was really solid pick. So that brings us to round 3, pick 84, and the Bucs went with Jacob Parrish, another corner out of Kansas State. I was a bit kind of, to use a Musab Tariq phrase, it kind of raised my eyebrows a bit. But going back-to-back corner, definitely interesting. But I still went with B because their cornerback room, as we've talked about a lot, is much maligned, and that injury bug hits, and it hits hard. It seems like the Bucs just have rotten injury luck with this position. So drafting 2 back-to-back, not necessarily the worst idea. So while I wasn't ecstatic about it, I was still like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Plus, he might slot into the slot, forgive the pun. So the draft fit was an A minus. Not really much of a reach and a bit of a steal. He's definitely uber athletic, and frankly, if he was just taller, he probably would have gone in the early second, maybe even first round. He's really, really good. He's that athletic. So my opinion of the player is a B plus. Like, I'm pretty high on Jacob Parrish as a player. I think he can slot into that. I think he can fit into that nickel role really quickly. I think he can start pretty much right away and keep Tyke Smith in the safety role. So my overall grade of this, B plus. I think he's going to be a really, really solid player. The size is an interesting thing to worry about because, the cornerback position, you're going up against guys that can be pretty big. You can go up against DK Metcalf, Mike Evans. I mean, obviously, you won't be playing Mike Evans, hopefully, but you can go against some bigger dudes. So we'll see how that size affects him moving forward. But he's got all the athletic ability in the world. Really, really nice guy in terms of that. So overall grade B plus. Mr. Treek, how about you, man? What were your grades for Jacob Parrish?
Yeah, man. I'm just gonna go positional need. I'm just gonna have to start off with a B. I feel like it wasn't, it was interesting. I guess we went back to back on corners, but hey, I'm all for it. I guess kind of just leads me to I guess, was he the right guy? I gave it an A just because I feel like he's an absolute dog out there. I feel like the only thing that, makes me feel a little bit worried is obviously his size. Cause I mean, yeah, as you mentioned already, going head to head with someone like DK Metcalf or someone like the size of Mike Evans, it's scary. You know what I'm saying? So, but to summarize it all, I mean, I'm going to say, I'm going to give him a B. Even overall grade, I'm going to go with the B. I feel like you just can't go wrong with adding depth to the corner room. And again, I mean, even, having maybe a starting spot in the nickel, in the nickel role as well could be real nice. Let Tyke Smith focus on safety. So to summarize it, yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm all here for it, man. I feel like it makes up, for the Egbuka pick, but I feel like after that one, you got to go defense no matter what for the rest of the draft.
Yeah, and not to spoiler alert, they pretty much did. So it's definitely it was definitely an interesting start to the draft, but I feel like things really settled in as it progressed, and I started to see the vision a little bit. Just I wasn't necessarily super happy about it, but like you said, going defense pretty much the rest of the draft, I totally got. So could be worse. Zach Blaine was sort of a little bit mum on this, but I was expecting him to be a lot more excited about this pick because he's been slamming the table for cornerbacks. So he went B+ on positional need, which is higher than both of us, but draft fit he went B+ as well. Opinion of the player, he was only at a B, and overall it was a B. So I thought that was kind of interesting because Zach's all about those cornerbacks, but maybe he's not as excited because this guy maybe fits that nickel role a little bit more. I know Zach has been mostly grilling the outside corners for the Bucs, which understandably so. It's going to be interesting to see how they fit Parrish out there. Because maybe they have him exclusively in that nickel role, but he lined up on the outside all the time at Kansas State. Like that was sort of like he was actually very rarely in nickel. So maybe they see him more of as a versatile depth piece than just a pure nickel corner starting out of the gate. But we'll see how training camp progresses. We'll see what Todd Bowles is saying in the pressers and all that stuff. So it's just a storyline to monitor. But moving on to round 4, pick 121, they selected Dave Walker, the edge rusher out of Central Arkansas. This was a bit of an unpopular pick for Zach Blaine. He was not super happy about it. I know that I love Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. I think he's going to be great. He ended up on the Chargers a few picks later. I thought that would have been an interesting way to go, so I wasn't necessarily super happy about it at the time. But as I sat with it, as I slept on it, I was like, okay, this is okay. But Zach was not super happy about it. Positional need, he was cool with. He totally understood, which agreed. Positional need was A for him. His draft fit was a B, and his opinion of the player was a C. Overall grade also a C. So he was not super stoked about this pick because he's concerned about the small school. In case you weren't aware, Central Arkansas D2 school. So he was doing it against not great competition. But Mr. Tariq, how about you, man? What were your thoughts on this pick, and how big are your concerns about Dave Walker's competition level? What he played against in college?
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, it was definitely a big need. I gave it an A. I think David Walker is an absolute beast, violent hands, aggressive. I mean, his tape was,
it was impressive.
Very fun to watch. It was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's why I think he's, great. He's a phenomenal player. But unfortunately, the competition level
right.
It's going to be it's not even a leap. This is like, putting a trampoline under you and then leaping. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's that scene in The Other Guys where they're jumping off the building and they say aim for the bushes. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's Samuel L. Jackson, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Sorry, that's maybe too obscure of a reference, but somebody in the audience will get it, hopefully. But yeah, I'm with you. Sorry, keep going. I just wanted to throw.
No. I was just gonna say. I mean, that's my only concern is how long it takes him to adjust. I think my only thing is I'm still optimistic. I never want to just kind of completely want to crap on a guy, but I feel like the scouts did their work. They feel like this guy was worth the pick. Obviously, I guess you could call him a hidden gem since he's coming from a D2 school.
Right.
But my prediction is that, I think he's going to have a bright future, but I'm just worried about how much he's going to contribute specifically this year. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to learn and adjust.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely more of a project player. But that's okay. It's round 4, it's day 3. That's sort of the time to take risks like this because, like you said, the tape is really fun because he was dominating at the lower levels, like otherworldly stuff. I think he led in just like every defensive statistic possible.
He's got this one sack where he literally like went Superman mode and just got the
Yeah.
guy. It's
Just
nuts.
crazy stuff. And the thing is, like, you look at his I believe it was a Senior Bowl where he was
Hmm.
where he also worked out, and he held his own, more than held his own. He looked impressive against the D1 talent. So, obviously it's not a real game, it's not, blah blah blah, but I'd like to think that maybe those concerns are a little bit overblown, but at the same time I do get it, because like you can get a little cute sometimes. Teams have fallen for the whole, let's draft a guy out of us. Like, I think of Cole Strange, the Patriots first round pick a few years ago, who was not exactly panned out. I mean, he's been just an average at best interior offensive lineman. And if you're spending a first round pick on an interior offensive lineman, you better be getting a really good player, because, the positional, the positional needs, like the priorities, are definitely out of whack there in terms of draft capital. So, but I don't know. I was pretty okay with this pick as I slept on it. I gave it an A for positional need. I think we're unanimous in that regard. Draft fit was A minus. It definitely wasn't a reach, and it was a bit of a steal. I don't know if I'd call it like Shadur Sanders in the 5th round or anything, but it was definitely a very solid place to pick this guy. I'm at a B for my opinion of the player, sort of for all the reasons that we just mentioned. And then my overall grade was an A minus, just because, I understand at round 4 taking sort of a high upside guy, because the risk is certainly there. Like, you could see him go out and totally flub, not be able to make the adjustment, not be able to keep up with the competition. But if he's able to even produce at like half of the level that he was at D2, then you've got a really good player in the 4th round. So, I'm hoping that middle ground is sort of where he falls into, and this ends up being a really great pick. But we'll get to my favorite pick of this draft, this next one. Round 5, 157, Elijah Roberts. He was listed as an edge rusher out of SMU. He's a bit big to be an outside linebacker, 3-4 standing up edge rusher. Maybe they'll line him up out there. I'm not really sure, but I think from my perspective, at least where I see him fitting in, is certainly as a defensive end in the 3-4 scheme, sort of competing with Logan Hall for that third defensive lineman role. So that's where I've got him at in terms of where he lines up. And my positional need was an A, draft it A, opinion of the player A minus, and overall grade A, because this guy is huge. He's 295. He's just a monster on the edge. He graded out really well at the draft combine. And he was very productive at SMU, which is an ACC school, so not quite SEC or any of the higher level competition, but definitely not a slouch of a conference. Still a very quality conference. He was playing some high level competition.
Not Central Arkansas.
Not Central Arkansas. That is for darn sure. So I was pretty stoked about this pick. I really liked Elijah Roberts coming out of SMU. I thought that I wasn't sure that he was going to last around 5, and I think the Bucs probably weren't either. And so when he did last, I think they were like, "Oh yes, yes please." And I don't blame them, because there's definitely a need on their interior defensive line. Like, after Logan Hall, the depth gets real thin. Like, it gets really weird, So they definitely needed to address that position, and they did just that with Elijah Roberts. But Mr. Tariq, how about you, man? What were your thoughts on the Elijah Roberts pick?
Real happy with it, man. Seriously. For me, the overall draft grade, I think it was definitely a need. So I gave it an A. I think he fits real well. Obviously, is he perfect? No, but my overall grade, I gave him an A minus as well. I actually had him in one of my day 3 guys when we were when we were going over edge. So this was real nice to, I guess, finally. I think that may have been my first time I've hit on something from what I remember.
I feel like you've hit on another one that you've mentioned. I think you mentioned Rashad White actually when he got drafted.
Oh, maybe. Oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah. You gotta give yourself more credit than that, big dog. You definitely.
Thanks, but hey, I'll tell you this: I find it very nice / interesting that we went corner, and then edge. But hey, those are the 2 positions that I feel like we've all been talking about. That the Bucs need to kind of stock up on, and I feel like this guy, he is going to be, if anything, worse comes to worse, a versatile kind of role player. He can line up about anywhere and still win reps. That's exactly what he did at SMU, and just he's a monster out there. So hopefully, he gets his reps in, he makes an impact, because as you mentioned it already, that edge room is looking real thin, after, guys like Logan Hall. So, we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, the defensive line in general, like you said, it's definitely a tough room. So, it's good that, like you said, versatility. And I really enjoy that they went with more of a traditional pick to address these positions with their first one. Like they went Benjamin Morrison, they went Dave Walker. Those guys have kind of clear cut roles. But then they went Parrish and then they went Roberts. Those two guys can kind of do a bunch of different things on the football field. So, it's nice to double up on a position of need, but also get guys that can also fill other roles. So I'm definitely, that's a great point there with him lining up all over the place. That's going to make for a really interesting, because I think, you get into the day 3 guys, and these can be borderline rosterable guys. Some of these guys don't end up on the team. But I think that the versatility is going to play huge, and it's going to loom large when it comes to roster cuts and stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited to see how Elijah Roberts' career with the Bucs. Hopefully he gets it off to a good start. Zach Blaine was also pretty high on this pick. He went A for positional need, A for draft fit. He was a little lower on him than I think I was. He went B for his opinion of the player, but B+ overall grade. That's pretty good. So I think we're all in agreement. This is a pretty good pick. And then we get to what I think might have been Zach Blaine. Oh, wow. Never mind. His grades are horrible for this pick. But it was one of his favorite players. Maybe not his favorite pick, but Tez Johnson, round 7, pick 235, wide receiver out of Oregon. I do want to preface this 7th round picks. I mean, the draft in general is a crapshoot. You get into round 7, it's like shrug, you know what I mean? And the difference between round 7 guys and undrafted free agents is marginal at best. So wanted to preface that before our grades maybe sound too harsh, because, it is a 7th round pick. Like most of the time these guys ends up practice squad guys at best. So it can be tempting to sort of dream on guys. It can also be tempting to overreact and be negative with these picks. Let's all just relax. It's Tez Johnson. He could be really fun, but I want to hear your opinions on this Tez Johnson pick. What were your thoughts?
You know what? I was pretty cool with it, man. This is where I kind of had wide receiver, us picking a wide receiver in mind,
Sure.
Just grabbing a guy, in the, second to last or last round. Obviously we didn't get a 6th round, so this was it. But Speedy Gonzalez, interesting, of course, if you don't know already. I think he is the lightest draft prospect. So I guess
he is small. He is skinny.
Yeah, small. Yeah, but small, speedy guy. So, hey, man, I'll take it. And I mean, if anything, I know. Oh, I'm forgetting her name, who had joined us on the draft, but she had actually mentioned that she was thinking about,
yes,
the future
Tammy
or special teams. Tammy, yes, Miss Tammy.
Yes.
So, yeah, shout out Miss Tammy.
That's right.
She had mentioned that, what exactly is the future of our special teams, and I think she wanted to, she was open to beefing up a little bit on that special team. So I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, I know he had special teams experience
Absolutely
at Oregon. So I mean, yeah, with a guy as fast and light as him, you got to throw him on special teams. So who knows? Maybe his first year with us is special teams role. Hey, I'll take that. So I mean, again, it's a 7th round. So
yeah. I mean, this is the perfect place to pick a guy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the 7th round. Like you're getting into the guys that you don't know that are probably, you don't know that they're going to even make the roster in general. So it does make me question Sterling Shepard's spot on this team. Because, they signed Sterling Shepard, they brought him back. And he played quite a bit last year because of the injuries and everything. But I do wonder if maybe they selected Tez Johnson with, hey, like Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard. It's been a while. This is going to be their second year, Trey Palmer's 3rd year, Sterling's 2nd year with the Bucs. Maybe they're just trying to add some variety. And I think it's going to be really interesting because, like you said, Tammy brought it up, the kickoff or punt returners. It's kind of been a revolving door. They haven't really had a specialist in a while. Not that every team really needs one, not that every team really does, but Tez Johnson could be a really valuable gadget player, sort of a really undersized guy that you don't really want running too many traditional routes, frankly. But if you want a bubble screen, you want to line them up, maybe at the running back position, maybe just do some weird stuff with them. So my positional need was a C because they already addressed the wide receiver room. I don't know that he makes a team, but at the same time, it's round 7, so don't look too much into that. Draft fit B+. Like this was definitely a guy that some people had going like round 5, round 4. It was a bit surprising that he fell this much, but the size thing is a real issue. Like how much traditional wide receiver can he really play at his size? It's a big concern. So I get it. My opinion of the player was B, the athleticism, it'll play. But how much, it's just going back to the size and his ability to run routes. Like, he's been more athletic than everyone pretty much at every level he's played. So he hasn't really had to develop a traditional route tree, so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Overall grade B, because, it's the 7th round. So it's probably fine. There were other players that maybe would have been interesting, but at the same time, what are you going to do? So overall draft grades, Zach Blaine gave it a C, which a bit harsh, but I think he's still pretty low on the Emeka Egbuka thing. I think that's what he would say if he were here. I gave it a B plus. I just think that after the Emeka Egbuka trade, it was really, really skyrocketing. I thought they did a tremendous job, found a lot of value at positions of huge need. Because, there's still some really good players, even after round 1. I get that the round 1 pick can be the most important, but man, those picks after it matter too. And I think they did a really, really tremendous job with the remaining picks. And Mr. Treek, how about you, man? What were your overall thoughts on the Bucs draft?
I gave it a B. I was pretty satisfied, after that Egbuka pick with what we did. We focused on the defense, snagged potential, special teams starter. And, I couldn't be more happier. We got some great guys, absolute studs. I really am optimistic about all these guys. So I'm going to go with B just because I trust Jason Light and the rest of the, front office. And looking forward to seeing, how these guys do this upcoming year. I feel like, if anything, the biggest thing that I wanted was, or a lot of people wanted, I know Zach probably wanted that, was to focus on, defense, of course, and focus on corners and, edge rushers as well. So what a nice, as we mentioned, would have been nice we had, to get a safety or something, but there's always undrafted free agents.
There's always Shiloh Sanders and his
There's always Desmond Watson.
Right. Desmond Watson. Oh man, I'm actually kind of excited about Desmond Watson. I know he's been
the heaviest, and I think we have the heaviest and the lightest.
That's right. Exactly. Variety
prospect,
is the spice of life. Exactly. Diversity is important.
And we got a D2 hidden gem. Wow.
That's right.
It's a Bucs life.
It's a Bucs life, man. Oh man, what a tremendous draft. We really appreciate y'all for tuning in. We're coming to the end of this episode. Hope y'all had fun listening to us talk about a little bit more in-depth look at this Bucs draft. Next week we'll be taking a look around the division because the division guys had some interesting drafts as well. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about there. The Saints were weird. The Panthers, pretty standard, pretty straightforward. Not really a whole lot to talk about there. But the Falcons were a little bit weird too. And with the Falcons, it's a long-term weird. So, we'll see how that goes. But we'll talk about that more next week. Definitely stick around for that. Give us a like or subscribe if you like what you heard, a follow, all that good stuff. But thank you to Mr. Musab Tariq for making my job easy as always. Hope y'all had fun, and we'll see y'all next week. But as always, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.